Hello YouTube. I want to talk a little bit about prostitution today. Seems to be a pretty hot topic here on YouTube lately. And a couple of arguments that I keep hearing over and over again about it. And one that it is human trafficking, the other that it is exploitative. These are pretty feminist arguments, or the arguments I should say that the big feminists tend to use, and the ones that I disagree with. Most heartily, I am not pro-human trafficking. I certainly am not, and I don't think anybody really is, other than the people who do it. But I also don't think that prostitution is inherently human trafficking. I think that if somebody, says, "Give me $100 for sex," and the person gives them $100 for sex, and then they take their ball and go home, that isn't human trafficking at all. That's a completely, as far as I'm concerned, legitimate transaction that nobody has any business messing with. When you've got pimps, and when you've got, well, even pimps and madams, I guess, can have legitimate businesses where they bring together a group of people and then people come and visit that house. As long as the prostitutes are there of their own accord and are getting paid a fair wage for what they're doing, then, or the house isn't taking too much of a cut, then that should be fine too. When it falls outside of that is when people are, forcing people to stay in the life of prostitution, or people are, not paying people, people are kidnapping people. That's all terrible stuff, but that's not inherent to prostitution. In fact, if there is one prostitute that isn't falling into that category, then you can't say that universally prostitution is that way. And I can assure you that more than one prostitute doesn't fall into that category of human trafficking. The next thing is exploitation. There's no exploitation. I mean, exploitation is weird. Exploitation is vague. And the one thing about exploitation is that the person being exploited has to say, "I'm being exploited." And then they should probably have to say how they're being exploited. And then you can say, okay, that person's being exploited. You can't just say that that group of people over there is being exploited if they don't agree with you. People say that prostitution is all about exploitation. Well, they can have that as a theoretical stance, but if the people that they point at don't feel that they're being exploited, then it isn't a legitimate argument against prostitution. The prostitutes that I've known in my life have never said that they were being exploited. And they've never said they were being trafficked, illegally. They weren't doing slave things with them. So, both of these are illegitimate arguments, as far as I'm concerned. We're talking about the whole thing, and let's use an analogy of selling cars. It's another transaction that can be performed in our society. You can, just because somebody might sell cars that are stolen, or might sell cars that are lemons, or might sell cars in some other illegal fashion, does not mean that all car sales should be made illegal. And that is where the argument from these two things are. Just because some prostitution might inherently be human trafficking, and just because some prostitution might inherently be whatever exploitation is, that doesn't mean that all of it is. And if one person isn't falling under those categories, then they should be able to do whatever they want with their own body, period. That's called freedom. We have a freedom. We should have freedom to choose what we do with our own bodies. And if we want to have sex for money, if we want to have sex for peanuts or cupcakes, that's fine too. And the whole thing is nonsense to say that it shouldn't be allowed. I'd like to hear a legitimate argument against prostitution. Put it in the comments, and like the video or dislike it or whatever. Rate the video down there, and subscribe up there. Thanks for coming by. Later.